Okay, take a great posture, best posture of the day. Really, do it. And then relax and give it away. So, we just started this podcast. I've done videos for a million years. But in all of the sort of fun and excitement of starting the podcast and hundreds of really sweet comments in the reviews, if you haven't reviewed it, please do. It really helps us. There's a couple negative comments, reviews, as there always will be. And even if you're doing great out there, you're gonna get some criticism. And on the one hand, I really love criticism. I think criticism can make us better, and we should always be open to it. But there's always going to be some folks who are coming not from a kind of constructive, caring point of view, and more of a, you are too big and you make me feel bad about myself and you should be smaller point of view. You've probably had someone like that in your life. I know I did. I was a big, loud, dorky, insecure kid, and I'll just read something from my blog titled Quote of the Day, Our Deepest Fear. Be quiet. Shh. It's what I heard in just about every room I went into when I was young, living at a Buddhist meditation center. When I was young, I was loud and sweet and sensitive and proud. Still am. This quote, then, really turned me around in a way. Instead of being yelled at or criticized, as I was in my Buddhist community for being loud and dorky and full of myself, when really I was more just insecure, I could let go of any shame about being big and loud and dorky and just be myself. And the cool thing about when you relax and you are okay with just being yourself is some of your kind of loudness or arrogance goes away, and you actually stop puffing yourself up or putting yourself out there in an insecure way, and you bother people less. You kind of find a middle gear, as I'm always saying to my dog, Radford middle gear. So next time you feel like you ought to be smaller, safer, less shiny, reread this quote. And this quote is by Marianne Williamson. And you probably know it, but it's always good to reread it and really try to be present with it. Quote, our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine, as children do. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just in some of us, it's in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our fear, our presence automatically liberates others. So, I'm not a God-fearing man, I'm a Buddhist, but I generally translate God in my head as I read that as kind of the universal, basic, fundamental goodness. That's kind of how Thoreau viewed God. I don't think anyone out there, hopefully, thinks God is an old white man. So God is just that universe, that presence of goodness. So it's way more fun to have a sense of humor about yourself and a sense of uncompromised caring for what's truly important than to pretend to be small just to get along. I remember when I was probably 25, I was an avid environmentalist, but I was a little bit kind of quiet about it and shy about it. And my girlfriend at the time, Rose, said, Waylon, this is one of the best parts about you. You should do that more. Do it. Nurture that. Do more of that. And it really helped me give my permission to myself to be an environmentalist. So one final quote, stop acting so small. You are the universe in ecstatic motion. Rumi. So I wanted to talk just a bit about the notion of humbleness or humility. Humbleness is bullshit if it's coming from the outside and someone's pointing at you and saying, you need to be more humble. You're arrogant. So I think we can all agree arrogance is not great. But what is arrogance? Often it's insecurity trying to figure out its way. When you're at a party and you're insecure, you might yell, you might drink too much, especially when you're young. And that's sort of your insecure way of trying to find that middle gear, that place where you're happy and comfortable and actually having a good time and celebrating. And hopefully as we get older, we find that more easily, and we don't need to yell as much, and we don't need to drink as much, and we can just show up as ourselves. Or if we don't want to show up as ourselves, we can be okay staying in on a Friday night. I remember I used to actually be embarrassed and feel ashamed with my roommates if I was staying home on a Friday or Saturday night. I'd like kind of hide. So now I'm totally okay with being home. In fact, I'd rather be home usually at night after a long day than go out drinking. So things have flipped. And then we can agree that, on the other hand, false humility is not super healthy. But I wanted to talk about humbleness as bullshit, because I think a lot of us view false humility or view humbleness as false humility. So what is genuine humility? Because I think all of us love genuine humility. When we see it in someone who's genuinely humble, I always think of Kobuchino Roshi, incredibly gentle, incredibly present, incredibly elegant human being. He died very sadly years ago, but he was a Zen teacher, a Zen Buddhist teacher. When we see someone who's truly humble, it's usually because they're incredibly confident and relaxed in that confidence. But they're not embarrassed about themselves. They're not self-deprecating in a painful way. They may be self-deprecating in a genuinely humorous way, because who needs to take life seriously? But they also might be very bold and unapologetic about being bold. So I always think of Stephen Colbert back when he had the Colbert Report. He was so full of himself. That was sort of the joke. But it was so funny and delightful that he was so full of himself. And I think what's lost in humility or in false humility is that sense of humor, that willingness to be ridiculous about yourself. We are ridiculous human beings. We're walking around with our genitalia, peeing and pooping and falling in love and having pimples and losing hair and having hair in weird places and farting, and we put on clothes and we think that makes us decent, and we're embarrassed of our bodies and our armpits are smelly. We are ridiculous creatures, and we can think amazing thoughts and create beautiful classical music, and all of nature is a miracle. I mean, life is a ridiculous, beautiful thing. You don't see nature being embarrassed about its brilliance, right? It just is. So I think the goal is to relax into your brilliance, and maybe in the future when you hear humbleness, that's the translation you could think of. I'm going to relax into my brilliance. So instead of being full of yourself and having to push yourself and say, well, I did that, I get credit for that, I'm amazing. And that's kind of insecurity, so when you hear arrogance, remember it's not usually really arrogance, it's usually insecurity. And when you hear humbleness, people are usually talking about false humility, and I don't admire that. I think making yourself small doesn't serve anyone, including, most importantly, yourself. You're being cruel to yourself. You're being like that patriarchal 1950s father to yourself. Shut up. You should be seen, not heard. You're doing that to yourself. And genuine humility is relaxing into your body, into your mind, into your heart, into your speech, and just having a sense of humor about yourself and your life. Let's take a good posture, and with a deep bow of respect and a sense of humor, give it away.